and then the following morning, just before daybreak, we left for Hawaii. And I hope there's no FAA people here because I'm going to miss something. We used to use, most of the aircraft going to Honolulu would use San Francisco Harbor as a departure point. Fairfield Sousa was just up the road from there. And as we were coming out after takeoff and coming over to San Francisco Bay, one of my guys comes on the RT and says to me, "Sir, you think we could fly under the Golden Gate Bridge?" And before I could answer, one of the other guys says, "Hell yes." He said, "Why not? What can they do? Send you to combat?" And that's where we're headed anyway. So we flew under the Golden Gate Bridge on the way out. And as I was saying, I hope it's a statute of limitations for the FAA. But there's plenty of room under there. You could take a squadron of airplanes through there. Another funny one, we island hopped down to Biak. The Biak, New Guinea was a big maintenance and supply area. When we arrived there, they took the airplane away from me, and I thought I was going to be able to keep it, but they took it from me. And we were sent up to Nazab Valley in Biak, or in New Guinea, where they had a B-25 training squadron, and I was told I was going to be there about maybe 8 to 10 weeks, and running missions on cleanup on WWII and Rabaul and those places that we had been bombing for a long period of time. I was there 3 weeks and flew 4 missions, and the colonel called me in and said, "Get your crew together, you're going to get the rest of your training with the 345th Bomb Group, the Air Apaches." He said, "They just lost 8 airplanes in the last 2 days, and they need both pilots and airplanes." And so we were ferried back to Biak, and then met by one of the B-25s from the 345th, which was up in the Philippines by now. And to get to the Philippines from Biak to Guinea, you flew to the Palau group of islands. And those of you who know the Pacific know that the Marines lost about 5,000 people, excuse me, taking that group of islands. But when we arrived there, they had a Marine base, and we had Quonset huts for the officers to stay in, and the enlisted guys were in tents down along the Buggy Swamp. So I made a decision, my first decision in the combat zone. I made all my enlisted personnel second lieutenants and passed them off as navigator and pilot replacements, and they all stuck with us up at Quonset hut. We got away with it anyway. Marines never found out what we were doing. When I arrived, I was assigned to the 500 Bomb Squadron of the 345th Group, commonly known among the 4 squadrons as the Bloody 500. And the reason they had that name was because they had the highest loss rate. I might also tell you that they also had the highest kill rate. We had more bombs on targets and had more shipping sunk, etc. of the 4 squadrons. So it goes hand in hand. If you're going to be doing the most, you're going to end up losing the most. And we were on both ends of that. But it was quite an experience because although people were not unpleasant to me, I flew 5 missions before anybody really started talking to me. The whole philosophy being, why the hell get to know the guy if it doesn't look like he's going to last very long? You might as well wait until he has a few missions under before you get to know him too well. In those days, you flew 5 missions as a co-pilot with an old-timer in the organization, even though you were a combat crew commander and had your own crew. I flew 3, and they decided to turn me loose. And I can still remember my operations officer, who stood about that tall, looking up at me and said, "Okay, we're going to turn you loose early." And the guys you're flown with said, "You're ready." And he said, "Well, I want to tell you something." He was looking up at me, and it was like yesterday. I can still remember. He said, "One last word of advice. If I catch your butt above 50 feet off the deck on the target, I'll ground you. And he was right. The lower you flew, the better chance you had of coming home, and the less chance they had of hitting you. And this is particularly with when you're flying against shipping, because the ships, they could only get their guns down to a certain angle. And if you got down to 10, 15, 20 feet off the water, which we did do, we'd bring salt water back and crust it on the bottom of the airplane to give you an idea how low we flew. And our radio altimeters would count the wave tops as we were flying. The only way that you could do us any damage then was to shoot in front of us and hope we flew through one of the big water spouts, which did occur occasionally. And we adopted I thought was a pretty good run for shipping. The lead airplane would do nothing but fishtail on end, wiping the decks with 1250s to keep them away from their guns, while the wingman concentrated on putting his bomb in, and then they would change positions for another run. And that worked pretty well for us. The airplane has just to give you a little bit of technicals, there's only 3 positions on the fuel adjustment lever on that airplane. And that is full rich, cruise, and idle cutoff. Pull it back and shut it down. We found out that if you pulled it back into cruise, and then one at a time kept pulling it back towards idle cutoff until you saw a rise in cylinder head temperature, and then you just popped it about a 1/16 of an inch. You got it down to the point where you were running both engines on about 125 gallons an hour, which was unheard of in those days. We could squeeze another 15, 20, 30 minutes sometimes out of the airplane that way. And the co-pilot's job, once we got up there, was to do exactly that, to get those 2 engines down to where they weren't overheating, but they would continue to run and give us our best cruising. And we were flying the targets at 165 miles an hour right on the deck. And when it came to weather, we flew under it. We didn't fly over. We couldn't. We had Holly V carburetors on these that were low-level carburetors. If you went to 10,000 feet, you'd be burning more gas than you did down on the deck, because the aircraft was built for ground work. It was interesting to see what happened when you ran into some of those horrendous weather fronts out there in the Pacific. What we do would be in formation. Let's say you lead 3 airplanes. One would continue out on course, and the other 2 would turn 45 degrees, of course, for 1 minute, and turn back on course, and you'd penetrate down anywhere from 500 feet or below, underneath that. And when you came out on the other side, the lead aircraft would slow down a little bit to allow you to come back in again and rejoin. And that's the way we did that. If you really wanted to see something you couldn't figure out when you first saw it, this airplane has a standpipe in a fuel tank that's about 2 inches from the bottom of the tank. And when we were coming home, very often we were very low on fuel. Be coming down the final approach, and you jump your nose like this, the standpipe would pull itself up in what little gas you had left, and 2 inches started to quit. So you'd level off and they'd pick up again, and you see a guy coming down in steps on the final approach. Gillette. Listen, when you're 18 to 21, you're invincible. You can do anything. You guys all know that. Anyway, let me tell you a little bit about some of the fun things that happened in our livelihood out there. We envy the guys in Europe from the standpoint that they had hard roofs. We didn't. We lived in tents. And when we got thunderbursts out there, they were the kind that the ground was cliche clay and hard as a rock, And 20 minutes after the storm went through, you were up to your ankles in mud. And you had to go out and free up all the tent lines, because if you did, then the minute everything started to harden up again, you'd never get them out of the ground again. But we give you an idea, the guys were pretty innovative. Our showers were made of P-38 belly tanks up on a bamboo frame with the tops open. They'd fill them with water, and they would be warmed up all day long in the sun. And you took your shower at nighttime, you had a nice warm shower. The shower heads were the number 10 can out of the mess hall, with holes punched in the bottom. And there was a little flap on the bottom of the tank, and you had about 3 seconds to get yourself wet and turn loose of it and soak up, and then you had 3 minutes or 3 seconds to get the rest of it off of you when you got through, and the next guy's banging on you, he's ready to get in there. That was, they rigged, one of the guys was ingenious enough to rig up a wash machine made out of barrel staves, and the whole had paddles in there, and the whole thing was run with a bicycle frame with a sprocket and all the rest. It was hooked up to there, so this thing would do this when everybody took turns riding the bicycle and turn around, everybody would come in and drop their clothes in there. And then you take it to another bucket and wash it out and hang it up. But that was ingenious, I thought. And then I've got to tell you the story of the 12-hole roundhouse. We had one, and we were very proud of it. It had screening on the side, and it had some plywood along the side, and had screen and a roof on it, had a screen door on the end. And what normally happened to that was I forgot what the schedule was, but somebody was detailed them up there, and they poured a liquid down in there, and then they would light it to burn off everything, and then the last thing they did was to pour lye in there, and that's why we kept the place sociable. Well, on this particular day, the kid that had the job of doing all that went up there, poured his liquid in, and realized he hadn't brought his matches. So he went back to his tent to get his matches, and meanwhile we had a big hairy sergeant in a pair of sawed-off jeans, smoking a stogie, and carrying a 6-month-old newspaper, and he was headed up there to do his business. Well, he sat on one hole and put the ashes down the next one. And the first thing we knew, we heard this boom, and looked out there, and that outhouse was about a foot off the ground. The whole damn structure was up off the ground and back down again. And then there was a hesitation of about 2 seconds, and through that screen door, I'm not talking about opening it, through that screen door, old Sarge comes in there, he's still got the stogie in his mouth, he's still got the newspaper, and he's trying to get his short britches up, and he came right through the screen all the way. Just like the whole screen door just came off. And later on, when we talked to him and calmed me down a little bit, he said he thought the Japanese had bombed me out. So everything wasn't mission. It was a great life. You got used to it. And in New Guinea, it was amazing. You hear something that sounded like a freight train. And it was these big trees with big elephant leaf-type trees in the mountains and hills. And it was a big thunderstorm coming through. And you knew the minute you heard that train that you had about 20 minutes to get all your flaps down on and then take cover because it was coming through. Then we had a lot of fun. We were able to scrounge some plywood, and we built floors for some of our tents, put them on ammo boxes for uprights. And of course, that made a great place for rats. And it was nothing like carrying a .45 go off in the middle of the night. One of the guys is trying to shoot one of those rats through the floor. There. Speaking of scrounging, I think every organization in the military had a scrounger. But they weren't thieves per se. They were guys that did things for the organization. Everything that they were able to filch, no matter where they got it, ended up in the organization to be used. And I was with a Prince. We had a villa in Manila for, after we had some tough missions, the boss would send us down for 3 or 4 days to an online. And I went down with this gentleman one day. He was a first lieutenant in the outfit. He was a pilot. Good-looking guy. He had that Tyrone Power look about him with the Ferris skin and everything else. And he had his way with the nurses in the 5th General Hospital in Manila. They all knew him. And one time he asked me, I was assistant operations officer at the time, if he could take an airplane from Clarkfield, where we were, down to Nicholas in Manila. And he said, it's going to be worth our while for me to fly down there. So we gave him $325. He took down. And the next afternoon, we got a call from the flight line that the pilot wants you to meet the aircraft with an ambulance. So we drive down there in the ambulance, and he's in the cockpit waving to us, back it up to the bomb bay, back it up to the bomb bay. And the son of a gun had 3 sides of beef in there and about 25-gallon tins of the Coca-Cola elixir. All of that stuff was worth its weight in gold, believe me. He'd been begging the supply nurses to come along. When I went down there with him, he says, the problem with being down here is we have no wheels. He says, we're going to remedy that. He says, how are we going to do that? He says, well, the first thing we want is a Jeep. So he said, you know that if a vehicle is left on anywhere in Manila, even if it's shackled to a light post, or you take the rotor out of the distributor, or whatever, either the Filipinos were going to steal it and take it back up into the jungle till the war's over, or somebody else is going to get to it. So the military police, if they could move that vehicle in any way, shape, or form, they went to a compound. And this compound had hundreds of vehicles in there. So he takes me up there, he says, take the rank off. So we did that, we're in fatigues. Flight suit or something, I forgot what it was. He says, now look through the fence here and look for a Jeep that's got a lot of 3s in the number on the hood. And I said, okay, we found one with 3 3s. He said, that's the one. He pulls out of his pocket a pad of trip tickets and he fills it in with that number and puts a scrawled signature which indicates that that vehicle's ours. And we go in there and we let some military police second lieutenant shoot our rear ends out to the parking lot where it can be taken. And he turns the vehicle over to us. We drive out of there, the first jungle road we can find, we pull out on the jungle road, out of sight of everybody else. He pulls a small white bottle out of his paint out of his pocket, and he makes 8s out of all the 3s. And makes up a new trip ticket with a new number on it, and we got a Jeep. We did that with a 6x6, and he says, Admiral Kincaid's got a lumber yard down here in Manila, and because we did such a good job of sinking all the Japanese ships in the harbor, we can't get most of those, our freighters in up to the docks. They're all anchored out in the harbor. So they're using ducks. You know what the duck was, or a 6x6 duck. The quartermaster drivers would drive those out there, and they load up with, in this particular day, 2x4s of plywood, here again, worth their weight in gold. And we meet one of them coming in, and we're in the 6x6. And he says, wait a minute. I said, I'll be right back. He goes over and he talks to the driver, and he goes back to me and he says, we're in. And we follow the duck out into a jungle road somewhere, and we off-road all of his plywood and 2x4s on a wire 6x6. And he gives them a bottle of Aussie gin, the driver. And the driver turns the thing around and back out for another load. We head for Clark Field with a 6x6. Did he keep any of that? No. All of that was turned over to the guys he used for flooring, for tents, and that sort of stuff. All the food that we had brought back in the airplane layout was right to the mess hall. We were probably the first fresh meat we had in God only knows where. How long? A scrounger is a necessity. He was one of the best, I thought. He really knew what he was doing. And when we left Clark Field for Hayashima, which is a rock off of Okinawa, we left 9 or 10 vehicles on the flight line that we couldn't manifest and take with us. And they were all scrounged and used. We had to leave them there. We couldn't ship them up. Let's see. Hello? Okay. This I understood was a TB-25. This was a trainer. This particular airplane sitting behind me here. I had the pleasure of flying in it in the last 2 years, and I gave a presentation here. And it was fun for me to get up there because they let me get in the right seat, but they wouldn't let me go below 100 feet. And they made me pass down the runway, and that was their restriction, but I had a lot of fun with it, 240, 250. This is absolutely gorgeous shape. When I first flew it, had 24 total hours on it, engines and frame. So it's restoration. And it's one fine aircraft. Do I have any questions from anyone?
About a round of applause for the Colonel to start with. Got a question over here.
The number of combat missions that were required in the Pacific versus the European theater. I understand it was more before you rotated in the Pacific.
How many missions you said?
Yeah.
Usually about 50.
It was 50.
Yeah, usually it was about 50 missions.
Okay.
Yeah. So that time, they started out, as you know, in Europe with 25.
Yes.
And then moved that one up.
When the P-50.
Yeah. But when I went over there, was 50 missions. And I flew 43, and then the war ended. I got to tell you one more story. You allow me? My greatest mission, I think, came when the war ended. And I had a friend of mine who had taken over as Chief of Operations for 5th Air Force Headquarters. He was a P-40 ace named Johnny Allison. And he was a colonel then. And I went over to see him because we were getting all kinds of rumors of what they were going to do with our group now that war was over. And I knew, if anybody knew, he was. So I found out that they were considering sending our whole group to Seoul, Korea, where our commanding officer would accept the saber and the surrender of the Japanese troops in Seoul. And then they started looking at us and said, my God, he's just out that's been in combat for 3 solid years. And some of the enlisted guys, particularly, had been over there all 3 years. The non-flying types, anyway. And they thought the right thing to do was to disband the organization. And then in my conversation with him, he said, how long have you been over there? I said, well, about a year. He said, well, how about me reassigning you over here to help me move to Japan? And he said, I'll have you home by Christmas. This was in August of 45. And he said, well, I'll have you home by Christmas. Just help me get working. And the cessation of hostilities occurred, but the peace treaty would not be signed until the 2nd or 3rd of September on the Missouri and Manila Harbor. And he sent me up to this base in southern Japan, a Navy base. And I was to take this classified material up there to that team. I landed there and spent the night and to fly back the next day. In the meanwhile, 50 miles north of there was a prisoner of war camp where the Bataan Death March guys, the Philippines, were freighters taken up to work in the coal mines for the Japanese. And their guards had disappeared off their posts, and these guys were afraid to go out the gate for fear that it was some kind of ruse to get them out there and shoot them. So they pulled straws, and the 3 winners or losers, depending on how you look at it. One was a first lieutenant of artillery, one was a Navy petty officer, and the other one I can recall was Signal Corp. And anyway, they were told not to contact any Japanese, just go out and look around and come back and tell us what's going on. What had happened, of course, was Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And the Japanese guards were already beginning to leave their posts. And they didn't say a word to them. But anyway, they saw a slow-moving freight going south, train, so they jumped on it. As it passed the airfield that my B-25 was on, they saw the B-25, saw us walking around. They figured, well, we'll take a chance. They jumped off the train and came in and told us who they were. 3 Bataan Death March guys. They were 90-pound weaklings with teeth rotting. You could tell they'd been through hell and high water in the last 3 years or so. And I said, well, I'm going to fly you back to Okinawa. And they said, well, is there any way we can get word to the guys? They don't know the war's over. And so we had filled up with Japanese gas there, so we were all right. We had plenty of fuel. I said, sure, let's check the map out. We did that. And we flew up and we found the camp. And I had 3 guys with me. I had a 3-man crew with me. 4 of us totally. And I ordered them all to take their clothes off, down to their shorts and their socks and shoes. And we had an ammo bag there that carried extra shells and so forth. We threw that in there, and we threw the first aid kits off the airplane in there, and pens, pencils, cigarettes, everything else we could figure that they could use down there. And I wrote a note to them that the war was over, stay where you are. We have you spotted, and you will be relieved. Wait for the Americans to come in to take you out. And I bombed them, opened the bomb bay, and slowed through about 150 miles an hour across the top, and we dropped the ammo bag. Well, I'll tell you what, I came around, made another pass, and then one of the guys was reading the note out loud, and then it was epic. The place went bananas to everybody. And I made 12 passes on that place, and I cried like a baby. When they pulled the Japanese flag down, and he ran an American flag up that was made out of bits and pieces of cloth that they had hidden all those 3 years, and made an American flag out. And they put that up, and the ragged thing looked good. If there had been a place for the land, I would have ran it. But there just wasn't. And on the way back, the guys told me what life was like. They had a man who was going to die from appendicitis. They had a petty officer there who was a medic. He obviously wasn't a doctor, but he had a medical book. They took a knife and a fork on the mess hall, and they honed the knife down for cutting with. This kid took out that faulty appendix, and they used the fork tines as a suture through the wound, and then bent the tines over it, and cut a hole in the guy's pants with handles sticking out. They wouldn't want to waste the fork, so that they could use it again sometime. As soon as he was healed up, they pulled it through. I'll tell you what, talk called Tough Life. And when they saw only a part of the Fifth Fleet and about 1,500 American airplanes on Hiroshima, the island I was on, they thought that was the entire war effort in the Pacific. They had no idea how many airplanes we were flying, 60,000 around the world, and how many fleets. They had no idea. But then it got funny because we called in and told them we were returning the 3 Lieutenant Ambulance guys. An entourage of cars comes down along with an ambulance, and here I am sitting there with the rest of my crew in shorts, and these nurses were climbing out of it. And we had to stay in the airplane when they took everybody away because we didn't want to get out in their cars anyway. We were all wearing shorts and socks and shoes. But that, to me, was the best mission I ever flew. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I hear Obi warming up the SNJ. Do we have any other questions? Back to the back, okay?
Have you ever been shot down?
Yeah, were you ever shot down?
No, I had to land wheels up one. We couldn't get the hydraulics working, and we bellied in, coming back, but we weren't hurt. I knew it was an SNJ. I'm a North American airman. North American. E-51, North American. I went on to fly F-86, North American. F-100s and then 104, which was not. But it was a lot of fun to go from 90 miles an hour in the steerman and end up on Mach 2 104. It was a pretty good career. But that's what kept me in uniform. And the day they said to me when I was about 41, 42 years of age, we're going to excuse you from flying because we'll save money on airplanes and fuel and maintenance if we don't fly you. That's the day I left. When they took my cockpit away from me.
Well, Lieutenant Colonel Wagner, thank you very, very much for coming out. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attendance. Thank you to our volunteers for helping today to set up, especially with our staff. Appreciate that. We have monthly lectures, air shows, different events throughout the year. My name is Gary Powers. If you have not met you yet, I'm the new director here. Started January 18th. I don't want to take any more of your time. The S&J is coming around. It should be taking off shortly. I'm sure everybody's going to be vacating real quick to go see it. So I just wanted to thank you all very much for coming out today. Join us for our program, and a big round of applause for Lieutenant Colonel Wagner.